Hey, this is Terry Bean. We got another fun episode of Business Growth Time coming at you. Today, special guest Mike McClintock is going to talk about how to choose the right app developer to set up those processes and automate all that cool stuff in your business. But before we introduce Mike, allow me to introduce to you the one, the only, the lovely, the talented, the Facebook marketing goddess herself, Janet E. Johnson, where today's the E stands for, oh no, I forgot to think of what the E stands for. Or lack of electricity. Electricity. Yeah, how did I miss that? That was so obvious.
I have no idea. I came up with this one.
Yeah. Can you even give yourself a nickname at this point? That doesn't seem right. I don't know.
I know.
But yeah, electricity.
We're going to start doing the R's.
I now have the R in my name. I think that's perfect. Yeah, so electricity. That's very timely. And I guess the reason I didn't come up with electricity is because I'm missing half of it in the house today. So thanks for the reminder, Janet E.
You're
Electricity Johnson. How you doing? You good?
Very good. Very good. Yes. I'm sitting here petting my cat so he doesn't come across the screen again.
He's going to pink star the show. Don't worry about it. It will happen. It's bound. Mike's a cat guy. He is a nice cat too. So
good. Another cat person.
I'm a very large cat.
Well, we only have 3 cats, but
only 3. Well, as soon as you get 4, then you can have like in the rabbit domain. That'll be good. So, Mike, would you actually consider yourself a cat person, or are you just someone who has a cat?
I'm just someone who has a cat whose kids somehow managed to convince him that we needed a cat that day, and I fell for it. They had that cat in the house before I could ever reconsider. Somehow they said I should be able to just name it, and then that's how they got me. So once I named it,
it was your cat.
Well, it's a girl cat, but I named it K-Line. So everybody thinks it's a male after Al K-Line.
Well, our little kitten is a girl, but we thought for 7 months it was a boy.
Wait, so hey, how old is this kitten? Like after 7 months, and I don't remember you getting a new cat since we've been doing this show. So let's time out here. How old is this kitten?
She's under a year.
Under a year. Okay. All right.
Oh, that's not the one you see going across the screen. She doesn't come down here. But yeah. No, she's just very furry, so we didn't check, and we were told it was a boy. So yeah. Go to neuter it, and nope. So anyway, the interesting start of the show, huh?
Yeah, we don't normally start with cat jokes, but you never know where this is going to go. So, all right. So Mike and I have worked together on and off over the past 10 years. He's one of the best developers I know. The guy can code anything. And as a result, he speaks that language. So he attracts some great coders as well. So built a heck of a development team over the last several years. But today we thought, there are people in Ernie land who might be thinking about building an app or building some web processes or building some form of technology to either market more effectively or take care of automating some of the things they have to do every single day and just make their business easier. And most people I know that have built something or paid to build something have been, let's call it frustrated. Let's be polite and just call it frustrated. Right. So how do we know whether or not a developer can even do what they say they can do? Because they all say they can do it all, right?
Sure.
All of them.
Everybody says they can do that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, there's really there's no license for it, right?
Right.
We can't go build a bridge without having some sort of formal license in engineering. And I don't like the term software engineer, because there's no engineering in any software anywhere, really. I mean, it is the worst misnomer that ever existed. And I certainly don't call myself an engineer and just bristle when I hear that term. We're more electrician than we are engineer.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of people that, it doesn't take a whole lot to be able to hang on a shingle and say, that you're a developer. So I think there's a huge degree of whether or not anybody's is good at it. And if you have 20 years of experience or 25 years of experience, it doesn't really matter, because it only matters what you have in the last 18 months for the most part, from the technical skills perspective. So sometimes you can get some great people that have, 18 months of experience that understand things technically. I think just overall, it's good to look for people that have, a business sense to it, to try to look at it from a perspective over the whole entire time. Somebody who remembers what, Usenet was, so when we reinvent it again and call it MySpace, and then reinvent it again and call it AOL, and then reinvent it again and call it Facebook, it won't look like it's really that new of a thing. It's all been done before. Nothing's new.
It kind of has, hasn't it, right? You can actually find some level of code that existed from 27 years ago that may not have seen the light of day, but now all of a sudden everybody's using it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's the same patterns over and over, and we just make them a little bit better and get a little bit faster at it, and it sort of builds on itself. But I think that there's, something to be said for a lot of people that come into it now. There's some new people that can grab some software components, let's say, out there, a lot of open source stuff, and they can cobble something together real fast. But they're new to it, so they don't really know what they're cobbling together. It's like they got a big giant box of Legos, and they can pull those things together, but they're not really sure where the Legos came from. So I think sometimes it's important to just have some overall perspective on how you're going to design things, have somebody that can do that for you, and just kind of get the big picture, and then make sure you're aligned with what you really want to get out of a software project. I think that's what's interesting sometimes is I'll ask a prospective person who I'm sitting down with and talking about whether or not we want to even build something. I say, why are we building this? Why do you even want this? And most of the time they don't know. Right? So the first question is, why in the world do you want this? Why do you want a CRM, for example?
Sure.
And they're not really sure. They just think they're supposed to have one. So then at that point, it's like, maybe we should figure that out first. Maybe I think we're going to need some bourbon and maybe some, and just try to figure out, do you even really want this? Because oftentimes what they think they want and they start going down this process isn't even close to what they really want. So that's, I think, the first thing is know what you want first.
So what you want, and more importantly, why you want it. Because a lot of times some of the stuff already exists, right? So if someone came to you and said, hey, build me a CRM, would you recommend they go look at one of the 74 CRMs that have already been made? And 74 is probably a really light number.
Yeah. I'd look at that and say, will that work for you? And if they have something that's unusual that really won't work for that, sometimes it's like, well, maybe that won't work for you. Maybe you do have to build something custom. At that point, you probably are building something a little bit more robust than a CRM. Maybe it's something that's running your entire business that just happens to have customer interaction in there, because most businesses have some kind of a customer. But it's find out what you really want out of this first. Why are you even doing this? Because surprisingly, a lot of people don't know that. And when you can find out what it is that they want it for, what's the reason behind this? At that point, they think that they can define whatever the project is. And that's usually what I've found is that that's not really the case. What you think you want and what you write down and what you try to create this, big gigantic spec, like you're building a house, and you're going to put every little detail in there that you want. What I find is then you say, yeah, that's exactly what I said. And now that I'm touching it and feeling it, that's not what I want. I meant to do this, So to me, it's always build something that is so simple and that you can play around with, and then say, are you really talking about this? When you click on this, does this really make any sense? Because you described this process that your sales guys are going to have to click on 72 screens for. That doesn't really seem like it might look good on paper, but it really doesn't seem like that's what's going to work. So if you can break things down, you can manage the risk of, a 6 or 7 figure project by breaking it down into 2-week chunks and just trying to figure out, does this button even work? Or are people going to click on a button and do some payments and then keep clicking it?
Because that could happen. You could have that.
If you work on it and on very, very small pieces of it, it's easy to change it. It's easy to just say, you know what? That's exactly what I said, and now I hate it. Now I'm totally thinking something different. If you got a week or two invested in something, that's fine. If you're 18 months into a process and now you're looking at it, now you're, now it's stress city. Now it's terrible, right? But software, to me, I think right now in 2018, the most important thing about software and building software is that it's going to change. Even if you're right, even if by some miracle you're going to write down the exact perfect specification and won't build it right the first time, by the time you put it out there, you're going to need to change it. So you've got to build things in terms of small components that are easy to change, and just decide that, when's it going to be done? Probably never.
Probably never.
And that's really what it is. So
right.
Do it light, do it fast, do it small. People call it agile. But that doesn't mean we just, throw it against the wall. There's a organized planning process and a feedback loop to agile. But the key component to it is build something as small as you possibly can and put it out there and try to see if anybody will use it, and then iterate from there.
And the feedback loop is with the customer, right? So it's heavily involved. So every 2 weeks you're showing them what's been developed in that 2-week period. Whereas the old days, you'd put together this huge scope document of what the plan was, and then you'd come back 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years later and go, here you go. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's really critically important not just to go through that where you're developing it with who the customer is, say the stakeholder at the company who's sponsoring the project, but to actually get it out in the real world with their customers, whoever's going to be using it in the end, because they won't lie and they won't speculate. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. And so the challenge, I think, around that a lot of times is people want it to be perfect. They want to do all these things and they can't get it out there until it has all these things. And nothing that's been hugely successful in recent history even has ever done that. It's always been something that they put out there. And if you're not embarrassed by the first stage of it, you're probably too late, right? You should be putting it out there so early that it's not right. It's not done. At the point, you're trying to get it out there and see what people actually do with it and then build off of it from there.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Nothing's ever perfect. I mean, like you said, they want to perfect it, but I mean, especially in what you're doing, it's not going to. Yeah, I like how you break it down, though. It reminds me of like building a website. There's multiple pieces to building a website. And if you just have the one area versus having to redo the entire website, sounds very, very similar.
Well, you go back to the perfect, right? So there's 3 of us in this chat right now, and how Mike defines perfect, how Janet defines perfect, and how I define perfect. Even if we're talking about the same thing, we're going to have a different definition of it. So whose perfection are we even striving for, right? Because it's so subjective. So I agree that, and Jay, I know you used to do some website development. Have you ever gotten involved in app development or other software development?
I used to try to do all that stuff, but no, I'm just marketing. I just hand it to other people at this point. Yeah. Yep.
That makes sense.
Now, granted, we do our own websites, my own like business growth time website. So we do have all that, but I still have somebody working on it for me, not me doing it.
Yeah, no, we're not letting you write website code at this point.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you have to anymore with websites. I mean, it's a little bit different than it used to be. Yeah, coding. But you know what? We talked about setting up the Facebook pixel, the pixel code. You have like this old fashioned HTML code that, people are still using it. I mean, it's still something you have to be familiar with, and to change it out and add the little, asterisks or whatever it is, you kind of have to be familiar with it if you work on the internet at all.
If I look at my browser tabs that are open right now, one of them still has the Facebook pixel code that I haven't put into my website since our last Business Growth Time episode. That's pretty sweet. I'm very proud of myself.
Just send that to me.
What's that?
Probably just send that to me.
Yeah, maybe it would have been done by now, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe if my garage
it's like
door,
a 5-minute process. You know what you're doing.
It's a 5-minute process if we get a 4-minute cup of coffee.
And then take 30 seconds talking about it and 15 seconds showing me where it goes specifically. Yeah, it would probably take me longer.
It's a couple-hour process, though, because I can charge for this. So come on.
Yeah. It's the old adage of the plumber, right? It's like you came in and you banged on a pipe. That's $1,000. Knew where to bang. It's $10 for the banging, $990 to know where. Oh, that's awesome.
That's good math.
That's quick too, wasn't it? It's not bad. Mm-hmm. It's not bad. So, what are some processes that people should think about automating in their business? Are there some standards or some things that are it's almost like, how come you haven't done that? You mentioned CRM. I don't know that I would call that process automation, but I got to tell you, it's a lot better than keeping all your customers in an Excel spreadsheet or an Access database.
Mm-hmm.
Do they still have Access databases?
I think they do. Somewhere. It's a museum. Yeah, I mean, I think marketing automation now is what it is. Sales automation, I mean, CRM is such a funny term. I don't even know what that means anymore. You put like 30 people in a room and ask them what that is, you'd get 40 different answers. But I think marketing automation is a huge thing right now because you're dealing with at scale on the internet with a lot of people above the funnel, and you're trying to interact with them in a way that is very specific to what channel they're on, what message they're looking for. We can do all that. We can segment everything into really just tiny little micro segments, but you can't have a person that's going to sit there and do that. It's got to be some way of automating that. So I think a lot of what the trend is using APIs to connect everything together, so that, you can hold the business logic somewhere in the code and let the different tools that everybody has, because everybody's got a Frankenstein system now of 40 different tools. So what I think a huge trend now is having one place where you can control all those tools and organize your marketing automation through the APIs, so that the robots in the cloud are talking to the other robots in the cloud.
So an API, for those that may not know, is basically the gateway to get into somebody else's software. Is that kind of like Facebook has an API, Twitter has an API, mm-hmm. LinkedIn has one?
Stands for Application Programming Interface. Mm-hmm. And it's like if you had a big giant thing that you connected a bunch of hoses to, where the hose connects to it to connect to each other, that's the API. Nice. And, it's just, I always just tell people it's giant robots in the cloud talking to other giant robots in the cloud. You just don't understand what they're talking about because it's code, but there's a standard kind of protocol for how that happens. And, you can do a lot with that. You can extend and pull in a whole entire somebody else's whole entire set of code and application, and, within seconds have a lot of extra functionality. Nobody's building a payment system from scratch anymore. It shouldn't be.
Right.
You should be using an API to use one that's already exists, that's solved all the problems, that's secure, that's everything like that. If you aren't doing that, you're crazy.
Right, because they're already built, they're already connected to the banking system, they're already approved. Why would you want to go through all the headache of trying to get through that?
Yeah, you're secure. You're offloading the risk to them. You don't have to store any credit cards. Deal with any of that stuff.
Where is this cloud that people keep talking about? I want to know, where's the cloud?
The cloud is very simply somebody else's computer.
What? I'm looking at the cloud right now.
You are. This is the cloud. We're in the cloud, and we just could have these 3 computers connected to a 4th computer, and that's it. Wow. There is no thing. There is no internet. Well, except for like Amazon Web Services, and that's a big dense portion of the cloud, but the cloud does not exist.
The cloud does not exist. I mean, that.
It exists, but it's not like a place. It's not a thing.
This became rather existential very quickly.
Well, it's a thing because you said it's another computer, so it's kind of a thing.
Yes. The other computer is a thing. But, the internet in itself and the cloud and all that is not really any place. It's just all the computers.
It's all the places and
All
none
the
of the
places
places at
connected together.
once. Oh, it's so deep. Janet E. Johnson, what do you think about that?
Creepy. So none of this exists, just like we don't know if God exists and all that. I don't know.
It's
Janet,
kind of like
bucking your Christian
kind of
roots
like
right
the
there.
universe. It's just a bunch of things all connected together. It's the same structure. It all looks the same.
The network of networks doesn't matter if it's internal in your body or the road that you drive on or the computers that you communicate over, eh?
Right.
Sure.
It's all the same. It's all just a network. It's all a big giant graph.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. If you drew it out, yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So what got you into software in the first place? Building software.
Well, let's see. A friend of mine had a Commodore 64. So I guess it would probably been like 1981 or something. And then, I sat down and we were typing in literally video games out of magazines, all the code for it, to try to make little video games out of it. That was the thing you could do back in the day. And then I was like, wow, this machine, I can make this thing do anything I want. And so I was hooked ever since.
Interesting. Huh. Now, have you created video games too? Other than that?
No, actually, I haven't. Aside from those little text-based games back in the day.
Okay.
I never. After the Atari, I was kind of done with them. So yeah, I don't do video games. That's interesting.
Yeah. I thought because at one point we wanted to develop an actual video game / app. We weren't sure, but my son was insistent it had to be a video game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, app sounds a lot easier. That's just my opinion. Now you must develop apps then.
Well, apps. I guess it's all the same thing. If it's a web app or a phone app, apps. I don't really do websites anymore.
Okay.
That's not. I mean, unless I have to, or if it's part of an app that's making websites. I mean, I would more or less. I guess I would make apps that make websites.
Okay.
But I try to create applications that manage maybe many websites and landing pages and things like that. So.
Okay.
Well, you keep using the phrase in the office, headless CMS, right? So CMS is a content management system. WordPress might be a popular one that most people have heard of. So, but what is headless CMS? Why is that a thing, and why does anybody care?
Well, so if you go into, if you build a WordPress site and you've got some pages on there and a blog, what have you, and you log into the back and you can manage all the content on there. And that just sort of assumes that you've got one website. Well, what if you got 40 of them? What if you got landing pages and microsites and multiple websites? And maybe you've got multiple maybe you got hundreds of websites.
Sounds like my world.
Yeah.
This is your
multiple
world.
Websites, all sorts of landing pages,
Yep. And they all have, and then you got to figure out, how do I log into that? Where do I log into that? What's going on? How do you set this one up different? Why is this like this slightly off kind of a thing? What server is that on? Winds up being this big giant mess. Whereas with a headless CRM or CMS, you create one place that you log into that manages all of the content, all the content types, all the sites, all the places, all the everythings. And then it just updates all the other sites. So you don't have to log into, if you got 100 sites, you log into one place and manage 100 sites instead of logging into 100 different sites to try to do that. So we it's almost like going back in the day to creating simple sites that don't have huge databases in them. You can just create, 14 different pages for a site and put it together very, very simply, very, very fast loading. And then use a headless CMS when you want to modify those pages just to recreate them and update them.
Never heard of it. Interesting.
So Janet, I know you use Leadpages from time to time to create landing pages. So give us an example of a customer that you're going to run a campaign for that might require multiple touch points, whether it's through microsites or landing pages and some Facebook advertising, because I want to try and bring this into a real world understanding for folks.
Well, I mean, the lead pages, how it works is you set up the lead pages to you can use a, why am I zoning the name? A plugin to make it be your own website. So now it is actually on your website. So it's going to your link, but I think it still forwards back to them kind of thing, you know, back to Leadpages. So that's kind of how that works we take them from Facebook to a landing page. We take them from, you know, wherever they're going to a landing page. And then that links into, you've got to make sure that if they fill in their name and email, it links over to a system, Aweber, MailChimp, that kind of thing. So now you're dealing with that too. And then it needs to feed back to you. Like right now I set up a lead ad. And so lead ads, actually, you want them to sync with your email provider, but you also need it to use Zapier to zap back so that you know about the lead through text or email. So there's a lot of different, places that it's moving. All these different pieces are moving around. So you're shaking your head, Mike, like you know exactly what I'm saying.
Yes. That's a pretty good, I like to call those Franken systems. And then that's what they're always going to be, right? That's where we're at. That's the cloud. You just described the cloud, right?
Okay.
So, you don't have to reinvent all those wheels. And you said Zapier, right? To be able to try to connect those things together. So I think what, an app does maybe on an enterprise level is to take all those things. And sometimes, you want to do something a little bit more than maybe just connect all those things together. Maybe you want to execute some business logic. I call it the traffic cop pattern, right? Where you're listening to all those different pieces and that data is coming back and forth, and you've got something in the middle that says, well, when this happens, do this. And if this happens, do that. And then save this over there. Or maybe I got to pull this data in and put this in the CRM, but only if it's under these circumstances. So I like to take those kinds of the types of things I like to work on when I say marketing automation is to take all those things like Leadpages and HubSpot and Zapier, and then, write some code that connects those things together in some robust ways that adds some business logic to it maybe. Or makes it real time, or listens, or does a lot of data analytics on it, or pays attention to what's actually happening there so you can optimize campaigns and things like that.
Yep.
And is that what you define?
Right now I'm currently moving to Kartra. So if you've heard of, and Kartra is everything, all these pieces kind of into one. Because there were certain pieces that I was missing in my business. And so when I saw this, it's like, okay, this has all the pieces in one. Sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's not. I've found that, sometimes I don't like everything in one. They don't offer, like I've even heard Leadpages is a better landing page builder than Kartra. So then I may end up having to keep the Leadpages anyhow. So I've heard sometimes it's good to, and I've been doing this for years. I've done all-in-one systems and I've done work piece by piece. And I have found over time that I end up, each one has their different perks. So I ended up kind of piecing it. What's your thought on that?
I think that's no matter what you're describing exactly what it's going to be today, yesterday, and tomorrow. And we'll be moving to something else and it'll be changing and it's all over the place. And just to keep with our cat theme, we can pull it back in. It's like herding cats, right? And we've always got to figure out, and then we wind up with things being legacy, right? So now we're like, oh, well, we got these Leadpages that are still here. And then we've got these other pages. And where did those come from? And then there's a WordPress blog. And now what's it called? Kartra. Now we're pulling in Kartra into it. And then Facebook is this, and we've got this Facebook page. So we got to keep pulling all the old stuff with today's stuff with tomorrow's stuff. And I think that's, kind of where we come.
Just draw a diagram of it would just make my head spin, I think. Like where I get a random lead from something I threw on Pinterest years ago. I mean, and so, that link's out there. That's part of the reason you can't get rid of certain things like the Leadpages, because you don't know what's floating around and on the internet, because you build things over time and you forget where you put them. So it'd be a giant spider web if you built that and put the arrows to each piece.
Yep. That's basically, I think, back to the trend, I think that's where it is to try to make sense of that spider web, because it just keeps getting bigger.
It does.
It just keeps getting bigger, and it's just stuff is the cruft, the barnacles that are still out there is shocking. How many things People will be like, "Oh, I was on this what website? Is that still there?" You know, I was like, "Oh,
Totally. Yeah,
wow.
I've had that
I haven't
so many
updated
times.
that since the Carter administration."
We were, it's funny. We just had this conversation yesterday, Mike, because I sent you over. I've got a website that's expiring that has been forwarded to another website for over a year. I don't have the email coming through that website anymore because whoever was hosting the email disappeared 2 years ago, and so I haven't used my original business website that I designed in 2002, and of course has been upgraded years since, but I haven't actually promoted it or used it in probably 3 years. I'm like, I'm just going to let it go. And you're like, no, you're not for $15. Just go re-up it, because all the different things that are attributed to it and applied to it. And,
Good point.
it just, you can't let it go at this point. It's been there since 02. It's like,
you just don't know.
Not like not found.
Yeah.
Redirected to something else it loves, but I can't find this anymore is a bad thing.
Yeah.
So keep the links, just keep it all glued together for $15. I mean, it's,
It's a really good tip. I mean, I think that's a really good point. Since we don't know where that's been used out there, you're better off hanging on to something like that. So you're talking the domain is what you're talking about, right, Terry?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. The domain's been around for forever, and it's who knows how many business cards are out there with it, but forget about that. How many different spots it's linked on the web itself is scads and scads at this point.
Or how many things that are on the first page of Google that are there because of links from that domain that are producing sort of that Google juice to push it up there. All of a sudden, you let that go for $15. Something they could all fall off.
Nothing anymore, man.
It'd be like if your name was Mike McClintock and a show came out with a character called Veep. His name was Mike McClintock and jacked up all your SEO.
Whatever. Must be nice to have that be your story for how your SEO got jacked up. Pro tip, go Google Terry Bean.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I'm the Terry Bean in Detroit, people. Not that guy. Yeah.
At least I have more hair than the character.
Yeah, you do?
I do, shockingly.
That's impressive. Not for him. That's awesome. All right, so let's work toward wrapping up a little bit here. You said business oriented or business, that they have to have some sort of business logic. So how can you determine whether or not the developer you're about to hire even understands business? Because I think understanding the purpose of the website and why you want to build it, or the web app or the application itself, I think that's a super important question. But I think having someone that gets business, and most of these folks don't, right? They're developers. They get code.
Right.
So what's the litmus test for that?
Well, have a conversation with them and find out if they're actually asking you the right kind of questions. The best thing you can do when I'm talking to other people is I want to know what they say they don't understand, right? That's the most important thing. If they're saying they understand everything, they probably don't, right? There should be a laundry list of questions that they can't figure out. They're just like, what does the word lead mean in this context? This doesn't make any sense, or where's this? You should be peppered with questions, because somebody should be, any business that's out there, I don't care if it's a McDonald's, right? A hamburger stand. There's a lot of uniqueness about each individual business, and they should be asking you a lot of questions, right? If you're not getting questions and they're not saying why, not how or what, but why, that's probably the first case. I always like to tell people the first thing you should build before you write a single line of code is you should start with a roadmap, right? And in that roadmap, it's sort of in an ideal world, this is how we're going to search for perfection. We talked earlier about how, we're not going to find perfection, but we can always keep working towards it. And in the process, we get value out of it still, where we can deliver some pieces of software that get us closer to that state of perfection. But without a roadmap, a technical document that's thick, that says this is where we're going to go with it, right? This is what we're trying to achieve. You don't know where to start, and you don't know how to measure it along the way. And a lot of that roadmap is going to define the why. Why are you even bothering to do this? And how do you know when you do it, whether or not it worked or not? What's success look like? What's the outcome that's success? Let's not just build a CRM system, because that's why there's 1,000 of them that all look the same, right? Let's build something in 2018. We don't have to customize a CRM to you. You can just build something for your business. Just know why.
That makes sense. And I know you do a lot of HubSpot integration, right? You're like certified in that world. So if anybody's looking for that, but how else, when should someone call you? When's the opportunity? They say, gosh darn it, we need to get in contact with Mike McClintock and we need to do it now. And then how do people actually get in touch with you?
Okay. So they can, email me at mike@s13a.com. That's a good way. Or just ping Terry.
Or ping Terry. Yeah, Terry's easy to find. Not Terry in Portland, this Terry.
He'll get it to me. But when they're looking at it and they're saying, what are we doing here? We got these email systems, we got texting, we got these things happening, we got blogs, we got content, we got landing pages, we got Facebook apps that we forgot about. We've got all this stuff. None of it's really working together cohesively, right? We've got 50 different things, and we need to get more efficient with it. We need to kind of clean this up. That's when I can look at that and say, I think I can help you out. If you're logging into 15 different things every day, they should probably call me and stop logging into 15 things. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm a HubSpot certified partner, right? But I usually work with people who also are HubSpot partners that are in HubSpot doing the kinds of things that they do in HubSpot. But what I do is I have other pieces of software that I write that log into HubSpot and do the things back and forth, right? Connect to it to automate those kinds of things so that they don't have to log into HubSpot to find something, so that their CRM knows exactly what's happening in HubSpot and vice versa.
Nice. Okay. Nice. Well, good. Cool. Well, how do you want to wrap this up? Let's give an action step for the audience. I think that was an action step, really. What you just said is they're logging into a whole bunch of places. It's time to maybe rethink what they're doing and maybe come up with, reach out to you so that you can come up with something to make their life a lot easier. Yep. Sounds like it just make your life a lot easier.
And sometimes that first step is just, let's put a roadmap together. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money or anything. It doesn't, but you got to get a roadmap. You need a roadmap that you can walk around with and then start talking to your other vendors and say, hey, how do you fit into this? Or how does this fit into it? Right? Just a coherent, singular place where you can get it all together and say, here's the roadmap. That's usually the first step for people. That's where they should start with before they buy anything or write anything or change anything or turn anything off or turn anything on. Put a roadmap together.
That's an action step and a half right there.
Yeah.
And I can do that for people. I love doing that. It's kind of fun for me too.
Sure.
Like, here's why and here's why not.
Makes sense.
Beautiful. Well, good. I think that was excellent. So Mike at s13a.com. I know you're on LinkedIn. I've seen you on Twitter at Galt Midas. I don't know how often you use that. I always like that Galt Midas. I always wonder how many people actually catch that.
17.3%.
So perfect. And look at it, Janet. She's part of the 86.7%, right?
There you go again with the math.
And it was wrong too. It was 82%.
I know. Both times, by the way.
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought I banged it out the first time.
No, I said nice math, and you were like, "Thank you very much. I appreciate it."
Yeah, I'm a communications major. I shouldn't even be able to add. What are we doing?
Right.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So, Janet E. Johnson, how do these people find past episodes and connect with us?
Yes, we have our website, businessgrowthtime.com. You can find our past episodes there. And then we have a Facebook group, and all you need to do is go to businessgrowthtime.xyz, and it'll take you right to the Facebook group. Speaking of having a domain, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's a domain that's out there. But we're .xyz if you want to get to the Facebook group. So we'd love to have you join us. And if you are getting value from our podcast, listen to this episode, past episodes, we would love to get a review from you on iTunes too.
We've got like 115 of them, right? I mean, there's a lot of episodes out there. So very, very cool. All right, Mike McClintock, thank you for joining us today and sharing some
Thanks for having me. Good times.
Always, always. And Ernie, we'll look forward to seeing you real soon.
Thank you.